Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Niha, Buenos dias, Buenos tardes, What up, though? This is Café Melange. It is week numero 7, session numero 3. It is day numero 4 of the week. So today, it may be a long one. I got a number of things to share. I reminded of something I wanted to share yesterday, but today it seems appropriate for me to kind of maybe save that for another day. So I'm just dealing with that at the moment. Checking sound levels, the wind situation, because it is windy today. I'm in a sukkah. It's after Sukkot. So there's work to do. So today, tres cosas, basically, with the ashy knuckles. Cosa numero uno is YouTubers. Cosa numero dos is story. But, it's heavy. And cosa numero tres is updates. So I actually wrote some notes just to facilitate the recollection. Let's see how we roll with this. And again, it's expected to be long. So for those inclined, recline. All right, so here it goes. YouTubers, saw a couple of YouTube joints this past evening. One was a YouTuber, a young sister, whose name is Vanessa Canby, I think is her family name. She's married, so I'm not certain if it's her maiden name or her married name, but Canby. She's of Scottish and Ghanaian ancestry. Her father is from Ghana and her mother is from Scotland. And she's here. I just saw a couple of videos, but very interesting. And I always appreciate when Melange brethren are keen on kin, and particularly ancestry and heritage, and having some knowledge and connection and follow through with that. So she describes her experience of traveling to Ghana. She grows up in Scotland, talks about being raised in a very Eurocentric environment, very few people of any color other than Eurocentric being there. I think it was Glasgow. And I've been to Edinburgh before. Big up. Celtic is my team, is my club from Scotland. Anyways, but she also talks about going to Ghana. Hearts of Oak are my team, are my club from Ghana. So, anyways, and she talks about going to Ghana as she's growing up, on a number of occasions, and being connected with a Ghanaian family. And the way she talks about it is very Afrocentric, and it's refreshing again to hear people talk about race and ethnicity outside of the American context, particularly for people who, like myself, who are very much immersed within the American context, where there's just so much charged and avoidance, and additionally, so for somebody else to talk about it, it's very refreshing. Even, I mean, obviously when it's positive, it's nice, but even when it's like challenging and talks about the challenges, it's just like there's a lightness that comes with that. So anyways, it's nice to hear that, and to see their perspective, to gain the affirmation of the experience, and like the happiness even that's experienced even amidst the challenges. It's so difficult to get people to get off the trope of tragedy when talking about race, and particularly big mixed ethnicity in the United States. And even people who empathize and want to like be down for the cause is still like, oh, but it's just so tough, and like, get off that, it's beautiful, and we can talk about the trouble with this and the other, but it's fantastic. So I find that even though people who are mixed in other places are also going through challenges, and obviously have a lot of issues to reconcile and whatever, it's just there's some of them shackles, literally and figuratively, are absent from that convo. So, anyways, it's nice to hear that insight and perspective and that affirmation. Um, and so she also shows some of her videos. Recent videos are about her going to Ghana, and she gives some tours of and she does an interview with her sister who lives in Ghana, um, and talks about living in Ghana as someone who grows up in the West. Like some of the details, the pragmatic and stuff. So again, this the perspective is the insight, it's the experience. Very beautiful. So it'd be nice. Whoa, almost dropped this joint. It would be nice to do a convo and talk about it, because also in terms of the Melange outreach that we're doing with Melange Ethos Institute and additionally our global network, we are working to build connection with Village in Accra specifically, and so um, there's that, but also just the vibe, there's an intellect, there's a consciousness, but there's also like a light heartedness and like a relaxedness. So, anyways, that's one of the YouTubers. The other YouTuber is actually not a YouTuber; is a professor of university at Penn State University in the land of the approximation of Seneca, Haudenosaunee, even Cherokee, and additionally. So a little bit further east of where I am sitting at the moment, but not too distant. Happy Valley. So, anyways, it was a professor, or it is a professor of sociology, I think it is. It seems to be like a recording of a class session. It's a big class, probably over 100 students. And it's a presentation, basically like a very informal panel discussion of students who are mixed. And it was recorded seemingly within the past semester, like the spring semester of this past year. And so the professor is like asking, is maybe the video is maybe about 10 minutes long or something, maybe 15, something like that, 15 minutes. So the professor asks the students a number of questions and just kind of like has a very informal discussion. So it's informative, particularly for those who are less familiar with the experience. Um, and uh, just for information, that the fence behind me is not part of the sukkah. Just for people's information, I have to give a disclaimer about that. So it's informative, it's interesting, it's informal, it's casual, and that helps the engagement and the connection. And the students speak very candidly about the experience, which is interesting. Of like, what students would um, like have the how did that come about? Because I don't think they were students of the class. They're probably not students of the course. But the professor, and this wasn't the first. This isn't the first time he's done it. I've seen another recording maybe a year ago, maybe a couple years ago. It seems to be the same professor doing the same class, same course, different students. I didn't watch the full one of that one, and I think it was focusing a lot on tragedy, maybe, or maybe I was too busy doing something else. But I didn't watch the full one on that one. I watched the full one in this one. Maybe it was less time, but a shorter duration of the video. Um, so I may go back and watch the first one. But I consider probably the professor sends out like a, either maybe he's been doing it a while so he doesn't have to do out an official advert. He knows how to connect with people, or goes to the multicultural affairs office and sends a notice and solicits students to participate. Maybe there's a certain incentive of maybe like a free lunch or some kind of student credit, whatever. But students show up and participate and agree to like talk about their personal business. And it's not too personal, but it does get personal when you talk about family, particularly at a university, particularly in front of a group of students who you don't always know. You know, why am I going to say all my business like that? So, anyways, there are some who do that, some won't. But if you're just going to a general student body and soliciting people to do that, usually there has to be some kind of incentive. And if there's not a student organization to on that experience to like volunteer people readily, then it's like, how do you get the students to do that? So it's interesting. But be that as it may, it's done. And the students seem to be very comfortable and casual talking about their experience, and the challenges, the biases from family members, and additionally, so like I said, it's sharing some stuff that's sensitive. So kudos. Um, one of the questions that's asked, segue, one of the questions that's asked is about identifying. So which side are you truly? I think that's actually how the professor started, because I'm sure he knows that's like the trigger or whatever for mixed people. Like, yo, don't ask me to pick. No, no, don't come at me like that. So he's like, well, which one are you truly? Like, which side do you would truly pick on? And he might have started with that and let it go because he knew he was being provocative just to like start the combo. And then I think he came back to that about maybe asking it in a different way of like challenges identifying one way or another, or where does one feel like previously accepted, and additionally. Um, and so it was kind of the video kind of concludes along those lines. I mean, he asks a positive question, then he asks another question about what's a gripe or a challenge, something like that. But towards the end of it, there was, as the convo was continuing, and a certain amount of comfort was established. Some of the students talk about not identifying with either side, of like not being fully accepted in either side, and also not claiming either side exclusively. And so, again, it's a lot of that negative rhetoric, a negative context with which to communicate the experience. Like, I'm not this, I'm not that. Well, and there's legitimacy within that approach of the balancedness and the diplomacy, but then there's also the approach of saying, I am both. And a lot of mixed people do say that. A lot of melange people do say that. I am both this, I am both that. I am this, that, and the other. Um, so as I'm listening to that, as I'm watching the video, what occurs to me is something that occurs to me a number of years ago. I think I've yet to share that, at least recently, within one of these joints. So I share that today. And it is that, yes, when we look at the different heritages of our family and of our ancestry, there's definite, tangible history, heritage, ritual, tradition, customs, protocols, and additionally. And so some of it is very similar and exactly congruent with each other. Some of it's very different. And so we have to find that path of balance along accordingly. But even then, there's still like that notion of being bipartisan or multi-partisan, of like multifaceted. And there's certain legitimacy within that perception and experience, but also, I'm a single individual. I'm a person. I'm a being. I'm a singularity. I'm amongst an infinite amount of singularities and the ultimate singularity. But socially, physically, and additionally, I'm a single being. And so, like, with a single heritage, my heritage is full, because if you talk to somebody who's homogenous, and whose parents grow up in the same kind of tradition and culture, they still come from different families, usually. It's not meant to be too much of a joke, but they come from different families, so it's like you don't that person's heritage, even though their family, their parents come from different families, the heritage is considered the same. Oh, Italian. Oh, Indonesian. Okay, all right, that's a tangible thing. So when we talk about melange, if a person comes from Pakistan and El Salvador, in the land of the Mayan and Aztec and Neolithic Incan, if the brother or sister comes from that heritage and claims both and knows how to speak, did I say Pakistan? So if knows how to speak Arabic or Urdu or even Hindi, well, not less, knows how to speak a native language from Pakistan and knows how to speak Espanol and knows how to speak an indigenous language from El Salvador, and is in touch with the culture, there's that perception of it being, like, again, bipartisan, a duality, and maybe it's a very strong bridge, a formidable bridge, and maybe even builds a school and teaches other kids how to speak those exact languages as well. It's still perceived as a duality, and just a reconciliation amongst the duality rather than a singularity. People have yet to see a Pakistani El Salvadoran flag, and the rituals and everything. And so, melange people need that. Melange people need that singularity. And for the most part, what melange people do, in my observance, in my observation, is assimilate with the mainstream of the society and then keep culture, and this is what actually a lot of people from a lot of different cultures, homogenous and otherwise, do, assimilate to the mainstream of society and then keep as a side shtick one's heritage and additionally. And so melange people, I think, kind of adopt that kind of same coping mechanism. But it's in further difficult for melange people to do, I think, because um, in keeping that side stick, there's too little of it to keep the multifaceted or the multiple traditions. Anyways, I'm going a little bit on and on about this, but my point is that there's a need for a uniformity of a oneness of an identity of identifying of like I'm that, and there being some certain tangibility and authenticity, tangibility, pragmatism within that identity. So rather than saying I'm African European or I'm uh, uh, Moroccan and Russian, it's a matter of saying I am this. And in saying I am this, I am mélanger or whatever that singularity is, people saying, "Ah, okay, I know about that," and rather than being perceived as an oddity of, "Oh, isn't that a fascinating story, or isn't that a fascinating mix," and lending to all those kind of like idle curiosity questions about, well, what do you do for this and how do you do that? It's a matter of like, oh, I've heard about that, this and the other. So this is what I found for myself. I identify as the Earth, and so that's the singularity that I find amongst my heritage, my ancestry from many different lands. I'm the Earth. Now, I might be able to claim certain parts of the Earth with an increased amount of toughness than other parts of the Earth, genetically, linguistically, culturally, religiously, spiritually, and additionally, historically. But that's the same for any kind of tradition, any heritage. If someone says claims to be a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu, um, there's certain nuances. Well, what kind of Hindu? What caste? What kind of sect? What kind of level of observation? Are you doing puja? Have you made pilgrimage and this and the other? So they're all these different qualifiers. People say, yeah, but if you claim an Earth and you ain't never stepped foot on China, and you ain't got no China blood and this and the other, how are you gonna call it China? How are you gonna claim China? I'm claiming the Earth. Does somebody from India claim all of India? Is someone from Gujarat claiming? Um, uh, I was rolling with that. Come on, let's go. Someone from Gujarat claiming Punjab, or um, other parts of India. So it's the same thing. Earth. I'm the Earth. Now, that is a singularity, and people do know what the Earth is and have an idea of where it is, what it's about additionally, and fears and concerns about that, as well as affinities and loves about the Earth. And actually, a lot of people resonate like, yeah, me too. But again, it's not. It's further than just an ideological thing or a philosophical thing. It's a pragmatic thing. It's a ritualistic thing. Language as well. So, in being part of the Earth, it's a matter of like saying, okay, no, it's not a matter of like. It is a matter of saying, what's the Earth about, and having some knowledge about the history of the Earth, having knowledge about the teachings that come from the aggregate of the Earth. And the interactions, and so that's where the tangibility comes, and that's like where the rubber meets the road, or that's where it gets some substance and some credibility, but also some responsibility as well, because you're claiming the Earth, then well, your people over there are tripping. What you gonna do about that? Or your people say this about that. What you say about that? So people have to have a response to that. Particularly people who are claiming the Earth have to have a response for that. So, in my experience of melange, they're in infinite ways of being melange. So I communicate one experience or an experience of being melange, a way of being melange, and this is one methodology. But what I observed when I was watching that video is that rather than looking at oneself as uh, an abnormal oddity or exceptional case or whatever, it's a matter of understanding the nature of one's singularity. And then when finding that singularity, that cultural identity, that is singular. It's not. There's no hyphen in it. There's no space. There's no. It's just that's what it is. When finding that singularity, being able to name it, at least just even conceptually, being able to name it, and linguistically being able to name it. Once doing that, then it's a matter of saying, okay, then how do I do that? How do I be that way? What's the methodology for being that? If it's as a cultural identity, as a spiritual identity, or a religious identity, um, ethnic identity, and additionally, how do I be that? How do I do that? How do I live that? Uh, Day in, day out, week in, week out, upasada in, upasada out, month in, month out, year in, year out, life in, life out. How do I live that? How do I do that? Um, and then, that's strength, that's power, that's beauty, that's peace, that's harmony, that's transcendence. That's what's up. So that's what I consider. And again, that's something I've considered before, but I'm reminded of that when I'm listening to the young brethren on that video. Um, Identifying that singularity, that oneness that we each are. And then when we do that, um, then it's not a matter of just us as an individual being some kind of hyphenated identity. It's a matter of us being part of an identity that's beyond ourselves and beyond the hyphens. That's encapsulating all of what we are. And that can be shared with others as others deem appropriate and as it resonates with others. Haha. So, am I being Freudian and talking about melange? You betcha. And further. So, um, that's the consideration. Is for melange brethren to find that singularity, respectively, and when appropriate, collectively. So, I found the earth, and in doing that, I've done a lot of work, and a lot of like soul searching and pain and struggle, to like legit represent and be the earth, and honor the earth, and I continue to do that, which is why we have the segue into the next section. So that's cosa numero uno, the YouTubers, and some of the experience just from the past day, this past evening, of watching some joints on YouTube, yesterday. Did I say yesterday? Today? Or yesterday? Past day. There we go. Segue. Next joint. Cosa numero dos is story. No, it's a long story. That's shout out to Howard Stoney Trotter and the Journey of the Lion reference. Um, so, this is a long story. Haha. Now, I have to check my editing skills, because if I'm able to do it, I'll do it like this, aka or via the vegan bodega cat. This is what she does. Uh, Lightweight shout out. Um, so if I can do that, if my editing skills are nice, what you just saw there was a photograph of the back door of where I live, a Sona ashram, a residence where I live, and what it looks like today. And I share that photograph, and I'm gonna actually I'm not. See, I am going to do that now that I said I'm going to do that. But what I was actually planning to do was do like a cutout and then just show the photograph itself, and then keep a small of the photograph at some point here. So it's going to be around here somewhere, maybe, God willing. If I got my editing skills, cool. So we'll see how that works. Now, why am I showing the back door? No pause. Because there are some developments. Now, when I got back to the crib yesterday, how did I find this? How did I find this? How did I find this? What was I doing? All right. So hey, that's another story. So anyway, I get to the back door, and I noticed that there's some flyers in the on the door. So to explain why, to explain the significance of that, of the meaning, and the concern, the significant concern about that. It's some explanation, and that's how things go in a very complex, fast-moving society. Subtleties get layered upon subtleties, innuendos get layered upon innuendos, silencing gets layered upon silencing, so that when a little thing happens, that straw on the camel's back, and things collapse. You're like, yo, what happened? That's just a little straw. How did it do all that? Wait a minute now, because it got layers beneath it. Shout out to Mos Def. So you say, oh, it's just a little fly on the back door. Oh, wait a minute now. Let me tell you the story. So allow me, kindly listen to the story. So here we go. Again, it's a long story, and that was just the lead-in, and we're less than half an hour into this joint. Let's see how long this story is. So the story goes back, way back, a few years, back when I'm in law school, nearly 20 years ago. I'll explain why I'm saying all this. What I invite you to do is look at the door and see what you observe about the door. I told you about the flyers. You might say, where are the flyers? If you look, you can see it closely. There are a lot of things going on with that door. There's crud on the door. What's that? And what are all those papers and things like that on the door frame or the door itself? That requires explanation. Obviously, there's some communication going on with that door, and so this story is explaining what that communication is, what the significance is, like serious. And it's like, is it death? It's along those lines. So it's serious. I'm going to get further serious than that. Torture, rape, pillaging. It's along those lines. So this is what the story is, and it has some. You'll see how it what it has to do with lange. Why am I sharing? Oh, wow! One of the biggest things. I'll share this story. I'll begin the story by saying this. Here we go. Windy. I begin by saying this. In the belief of my peoples, everybody goes to heaven. Plain and simple. Everybody goes to heaven. That makes heaven easy. The thought of heaven, the prospect of heaven, the prospect of afterlife, that makes it easy. It makes life hard. Because, few things. In hearing that, or in receiving that, one might say, okay, I'm cool then. I'm at peace. I'm cool then. I'm at peace. I ain't got to worry about that, so, all right. But then, as that kind of settles in a little bit, people want to think, hold up now. Everybody? What about so-and-so? What about everybody? So I don't know if I like that, I got this thing in my heart, in my soul, in my spirit, in my gut, like, about justice. And I seen some cats do some nasty stuff. How are they gonna get the same thing that everybody else get? Well, righto. Some might just end the convo at that. Don't want to hear anything else because there's some nasty stuff that's going on, some atrocities. So the way I say it, the way I share it, the way I explain it is this: we all go to heaven. The animals, even the plants, even all go to heaven. All return to God, the ultimate singularity of God. We all do that. We all do that. Now, that being said, every one of us, every individual, every person, every human, every sentient being, every animal, every plant, we all got to answer for what we do in this life. We all got to pay for what we do in this life before we return to God. So, in some ways, it may be very evident of how people pay for what they've done in this life. Some people may make amends and pursue that type of teshuvah, that type of atonement, and reconciliation. And in some ways, it might not be very readily evident. You'd be like, wait, I never saw that cat say sorry. I never saw that cat make amends. What you mean he paid for it? I didn't see him pay for that. Oh, are you the ultimate judge? Are you the ultimate observer? Are you the ultimate witness? Do you know everything that's going on? Do you know what that person is experiencing In life, do you know what that person experienced before that person dies? Do you know what that person experienced between that point of death and returning to God? You can call it purgatory, whatever else. Those are all like pointers. But we all come from God, and we all return to God. That is the belief of my peoples. So that's not a specific Mélanger thing. That's what I observed. And rather than going to explaining it, I'm saying that's where I am. That's what I proclaim. That's what I share. Um, and I share that because that shapes how we live this life, and it shapes how we interact with others in this life. Because there are many people in this life who are very dead set against each other, and have taken vows and vendettas and curses and all these other things against each other. And even if they don't have something against another person, like a bystander, a third party, if that third party doesn't sign on to that same vendetta, then they get to too, or something similar to it. And so that's where my point is, because I'm one of them third party cats. I ain't got no vendettas. I've forgiven. I've let go. Now I recognize injustice. I recognize atrocities, and I speak to it as I'm doing today. Um, so there is right and wrong, and we do have responsibility in righting this earth, this life. That's part of tikkun olam. That's part of karma. That's part of dharma. That's part of the mitzvot. That's part of zakat. That's part of jihad. That's part of Tao. So I believe that. Um, but I'm a third party and I ain't got no vendettas. So why did I say all that? Because here we go with the story. When I was in law school, I do kumbaya. I do multiculturalism. Not too much interfaith because we didn't talk about religion too much, but particularly in multiculturalism. And by the time I graduated from law school, I was working on starting a nonprofit organization on multiculturalism, like a think tank. And I had actually rather strong standing amongst my peers from many different ethnic communities: European, African, Latino, Middle Eastern. I think I said Latino. Even different religions: Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, um, and additionally. And so the basic premise of the multicultural was to establish this think tank, and having these connections, having like these peers who are like lawyers and going into business, and the network, the extended network of the other first degree peers of those peers, of like saying, hey, do you know an engineer? We need somebody's perspective on this issue. But the basic premise of the nonprofit, the multicultural think tank, was to uh, enlist uh, young professionals of different cultures, different ethnic communities, to give like an op-ed, to do articles, write articles about experience from their own community, what the priorities are, what the experiences, and build like a collective agenda through the periodical. So it's like a journal. Again, it's very legal mindset, law school mindset, a journal. People contributing articles and doing it as a periodical. So that was the basic premise of the multicultural thing. Now, like I said, I had a lot of standing amongst my peers. And so we had like things lined up in terms of doing the writing and everything else. But we needed some resources. We needed a Gokale. And I ain't gonna go into the reference of who Gokale is, but we needed somebody to like support it and sponsor it. So whilst I had significant, and me and my peers, because I work on this with a number of people, whilst we had standing, and I personally had standing and strong standing with our peer group, less so with the elders from the different communities. And that distinction becomes increasingly evident as like push got to shove, and like I'm nearing graduation, like yo, I'm not getting a job. I need to support myself. This is how I'm planning to support myself. Who's going to support that? Recognizing that as much as different communities talk about multiculturalism, and additionally, and as much as my mentors support me in my endeavor, it becomes increasingly obvious of what the actual motives are. I'm getting a little bit onto it. So, anyways, so basically, people weren't too tough about kumbaya. People aren't too tough about multiculturalism. And you can say, well, it was just your project and this and the other. Nah, particularly because at that very moment, as it was a tough sell as I was nearing graduation. I was in a bonus semester of law school, so in my bonus semester of law school, guess what happens? The 11th of September. And now at this point, that's a long time ago. So I feel like I'm talking about some like ancient war or something like that that nobody cares about any further. But back in my day, back when that happens, yo, it was hysteria, it was paranoia, and where before it was a tough sell to get people on board the multiculturalism vote. After the 11th of September, what no sell kind of no sign away, if that makes sense. You got it. People was definitely not talking about that, and not even when people were not talking about. People like, yo, they circling the wagons, and it's us versus them, and um, cats are coming in the United States. Cats are going after Muslims, and the proclamation repeatedly within society was you're either with us or you're against us. And I say, yeah, I ain't getting on that bandwagon, so you can do the math on that. Um, so, uh, oh yeah, the other thing also is that I'll share this one. I'll throw this one in here for you too. Yo, Osama bin Laden didn't do it, and at least not alone. Um, the towers weren't brought down by a Cessna plane or two Cessna plane or a 747 or whatever else. And it doesn't take a genius to know that. It's very common sense. It takes a genius to not see that. Actually, to be honest with you, it takes a genius of avoidance and denial and apathy and complicity to deny that. So if you look at it, demolition. I'm gonna leave it at that. So the whole premise of the conflict and everything was contrived and deceitful and heinous, and the warfare that occurred, the bombing, the killing, the raping and pillaging that goes on afterwards, heinous. And I ain't getting on board with that. No kind of way. Uh, I should be careful because we're all connected with everything. So in some kind of way, we're all involved and we're all responsible. But in terms of directly and willfully, nah. And I ain't even like doing the liberal kind of hiding my hand in the sand kind of joint either. So, anyways, I say all that because I didn't do that, and because I didn't take the bar and sign on to practice U.S. law, because the U.S. Constitution is racist, classist, and genocidal. I catch hell. I get locked in psych wards. I get labeled crazy, psychotic, schizophrenic, and additionally, I get called grandiose notions of delusional notions of grandeur, paranoia, this, that, or the other, um, and stigmatized, ostracized, and I utilized the term blacklisted this yesterday, but I want to think of another thing because that's a racist term. But ostracized doesn't have the weight that I would, but just like outcast. There we go, outcast. Shout out to the ATL in the land of the creek. Um, so, as a matter of fact, for those who know. Anyways, outcast, not just by mainstream, but by black folk too, because I should say a lot of black folk, because one, the bourgeoisie black folk that support me before are like, oh wait a minute, Peter's not playing by the rules. He's not playing by the conventional society's rules. That jeopardizes our stake in assimilating within mainstream. We better make distance from it because that's what our advisors tell us. So I got black outcast there, outcast from mainstream, obviously, but also outcast from the hood in the street. Cats calling me Osama and finding an opportunity to pick on the weakest link or the person who seems easy target, the person who's different and who identifies as different. And so cats in the hood, and additionally, are very opportunistic. And whenever I see something that looks like a small fish, try gobbling it up. And that goes for foreigners additionally. So, oh, you don't like Muslims now and Middle Easterners? Oh, let's go at them. Whether that's militaristically or even just ideologically. So, anyways, outcast on multiple levels, um, and talk about choosing sides, and not knowing which side to choose and this and the other. This is before I found out about, and actually, no, actually, I learned about the mixed movement earlier, but the mixed movement also is kind of mainstreamish as well, particularly in the United States, particularly during that period. So, anyways, I'm getting, yo, I told you it was going to be a long story, so we can still settle in. Um, my main point for sharing that at this moment in this story sequence is that after I graduated from law school, looking to find a path in life, looking to find an occupation, I had all these credentials, all these skills, all these uh, notions of grandeur about myself, delusional or otherwise, um, and otherwise. Um, I'll be like, I had all this, and then the consideration is how to apply it, how to live, make a living from it, um, how to find a group, an organization to employ me and to support me, or that I can be a part of. And so, um, domestically in the United States at that point, um, the first consideration was finding a gig that would allow me to pay off the student loans because got a lot of things. I got bills, and so that narrowed the kind of that narrowed the options of like a professional job that's willing to compensate at that level, that it can employ my skill set, um, and without having without passing the bar, without being a member of the bar, of the U.S. bar. So that narrows it very low. And even getting like a nonprofit gig or like a teaching gig, even like teaching at a high school or something like that, I consider that. But again, pay is extremely low, below what to pay off the loans. I was six figures in debt at the point, and back in the time when that was like very high. Now it's like I'm told it's a year's tuition, but um, or a year's expense. So, anyways, those options were less. And also, to be honest, I had a lot of pride, had a lot of ego. I've studied for 8 years after uh, 4 years undergrad, 1 year business school, 3 years plus of law school, 1 year plus of business school. I've traveled the earth, this and the other. That's insulting to like suggest that. I want to do, and to a certain degree, yes, that's ego and selfishness and pride, but also to a certain extent and to a large extent, I've got these skills. I have a responsibility in utilizing these. Now, yes, I can be a teacher and additionally, but like it's like going to a doctor, someone who's been trained to heal people as a doctor, and then saying, okay, go make furniture, go learn how to make furniture, or do this. It's a different skill set. And doing furniture is valuable, and additionally there's not one is not above the other per se. Sometimes one might be a further priority, but a doctor is not above a furniture maker, and a teacher is not above a lawyer, and a lawyer is not above a teacher. um, People can argue about that, but my point is that but be that as it may, that person was trained to be a doctor, to be a healer. And usually, the way it's done, old school style, is that a community invests in a student to learn these things, to come back into the community and to do that service, because that's what the community needs. So if an individual says, I ain't going to do that, I feel like following my heart and do this, that's not what we helped you out to do. That's not what we trained you to do. Not what we need. That's not what you agreed to do. So when it came to me graduating, that's like, I've got these responsibilities because I throughout my career, as I always, my support is predicated upon giving back to the community and helping to build the community. In period, or semicolon, put on that one, and optimally. So, because you can say, well, building furniture helps the community. Well, all right, optimally. So, anyways, and there was a point where I had a gig lined up. I was talking with UWI, the University of the West Indies, in off Mona campus near Kingston, Jamaica. And I just showed up on a little bit of a clandestine kind of joint, like, yo, I need a job. And they're like, well, talk to the chair. And so the chair got back to me. He's like, yo, we got an opening. Let's talk. Then I said, oh, but I got to pay off my loans, and this is what I need as a salary. He's like, yo, I don't even make that much. So I was like, oh. And I had pressure from my support base saying, like, yo, Peter, you got these things who were literally signees on my promissory notes for student loans. So I had to respect it, had deference to that. Like, yo, I can't do it. So I had to, like, that was a done deal. So now when that happened, then that's when I got locked up, and I was like, it's a done deal. Like, ain't nobody gonna hire me at this point and pay me that kind of salary, along conventional lines at that point. Um, so it was obstructive, and so because of that, according to the terms of contracts, when a party of a contract does something that is obstructive for the other party in fulfilling that person's responsibility in that contract, that renders the contract null and void, effectively. So because of that, I'm like, yo, the government, literally the government, it was a government issue, court order, lockup. The government is obstructive, is being obstructive in making it, and me being able to satisfy my requirement in the agreement. Therefore, I don't have the same obligation of fulfilling it. Now, there are other elements of contract law that support a person not paying their student loans, particularly when, well, period. This includes coercion, imbalance of leverage. We can draw upon principles that particularly pertain to contracting with a minor or someone who's underage. And you say, well, people are legal age when they do it, but yeah. However, again, the conditions and the significant leverage, elements of coercion in terms of facing the prospect of life without education, a certain amount of extortion, and we can talk about intoxication, taking advantage of people when in a disadvantaged position, like predatory lending, and additionally, all these are render certain agreements that are conjured in, or that are established or feigned in such conditions as null and void. So uh, that also, we can also talk about democracy, the responsibility of the community, the public, society to educate its citizens, to be citizens, but also to be productive um, um, professionals or workers within society, and that goes for all trades, and that goes to the highest levels. And so the expectation of a student or a student's family of being responsible for paying the education, yes, that is part of human tradition since the ancients, but particularly within a democracy, uh, society has an increased amount of responsibility in providing the education. So there are a lot of principles that point to that. Now, again, I'm getting a little bit on detail on this joint, but when somebody, when a man of age, and was I a man when I made agreements to send it? Kind of, sort of. I I would be uncomfortable calling myself a man at that point when I was at that point, but technically I was of age. Sound mind, ha 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 ha. Yes. Um, Coercion, yes. Extortion, yes. Um, Additional undue leverage and additional undue circumstances that render the agreement imbalanced, yes. But I still said I was going to do that. I still said I was going to pay. I still said I was gonna pay it back. Um, so how do I reconcile that? If I'm this righteous man who's honest and fair and this and the other, again, it's a matter of understanding the conditions and how those conditions dissolve the legitimacy of the agreement itself. Even when the person is a comparatively willing participant in making the agreement. Um, Again, imbalance of I ain't gonna. that's another story. So, anyways, my point is that I tried to do that, but when there was obstruction, additionally, it became obvious that it wasn't honest, it wasn't in benevolent faith, and so my obligation is absolved. Don't have the obligation to pay it back because it is unjust. So, anyways, point for saying all that is that when I looked at options of like where to go for employment and additionally who to work for, um, there were very few options. And basically the options were basically this: either sell out and like do the sellout strut and work for a mainstream conventional institution that would be oppressing in one way or another people of African ancestry, and particularly utilizing my background as a premise for doing that. Not necessarily directly and explicitly, but that's how it works. Being an enforcer or a regulator amongst people of African ancestry, and when the institution's actions or the network of that institution's actions get called into question, then I get called in saying, "Hey, we've got black people ourselves. How are you going to call us racist?" And so that's kind of the role of the sellout, the Uncle Tom or whatever else. I ain't gonna do that. And so as a melange person, when they talk about picking a side, this and the other, it's not just a matter of identity. It's like pragmatics. Like who's gonna employ you? Who's gonna like pay your bills? Who's gonna put food on your table? What community is gonna do that? Because that's significantly picking a side. And so then, okay, if I ain't going to do the mainstream Eurocentric thing, what about working for a black group? Well, first of all, most black groups are still very much assimilated and pawns in somebody else's, some Eurocentric boss's agenda. So I knew too much to be able to fool myself in that way. And then those black groups that aren't doing that, they dead set against white folk. And so it would be a matter of me like going off the grid, doing some revolutionary type stuff or whatever else, which I was not necessarily averse towards doing. However, I don't hate white people. As bad as things are, as racist and genocidal and classist as things are in this society, I don't hate white people. And I ain't going on a board to go against white people. One, because most of the methodologies, no, not even not one. One, because no, I don't. But also, like the methodologies are silly. It's very myopic, and it's not aware of like the way of the world, not just the way of the U.S., but the way of the world. Um, so I ain't going to arms. I ain't grabbing a gun. I ain't going out to take out cats. I ain't going out to rob cats. I ain't going out to do this that, and the other. And so white, black, yellow, or otherwise. And so in terms of signing up with a black group, it's like the only genuine African groups at that moment, people of African ancestry, pretty much identify as just black, um, are against white people. I hate white people, and so I would be called to, again, instead of being a sellout against black people, I'd be called to be a hater against white people, and to like to discount what's that word, denounce my European ancestry, and just be an apologetic kind of high yellow cat who's accepted amongst black folk. Ain't doing that either. I love everybody. I love all my ancestors. I love all my brethren. I love all my relatives. I love all my family. And so at that point, I say, okay, what multicultural groups are out there that are genuinely multicultural, not a Eurocentric mainstream thing that just kind of goes with the direction of the wind. What's a genuine multicultural group? Ain't too much of that out here. So, and I knew that. That's one of the reasons why I was starting one on my own, because I already knew that. And so again, and I know too much to fool myself, and I'm too honest. That my whole shtick in law school was honesty, truthfulness, as much as I can. I still had a lot to learn even at that age, but when I graduated, like I'm too honest. I know too much. I can't fool myself. I can't pretend. I can't deny. And so guess what? Locked up, unemployed, psychotic diagnosis, and at least I'm not in just one camp. So, That's like where my thing was at that point. Living at home, in my family home, um, and still trying to find like a way out. Now, there was one option. There was the option I mentioned the joint at UE, the University of West Indies. There was that option, and one of the reasons why I looked at University of West Indies because it was still proximate to where I live here in Ohio, and that I could still conceivably go back and forth and visit home and additionally. But the other option was going abroad, England, China, Asia, Africa, someplace else, off this domestic plantation, and just start life in another place. Um, Use my credentials, work with an organization, worry less about the loans. But the prospect of doing that was very little guarantee of being able to come back, and particularly being able to see my family and my brother, my extended brethren, my relatives and my friends, and additionally. And so, particularly at that point, at that age of my at that stage of my life, at that age, that was too much. I can't say sayonara to my family at that point. Nah. So I'm like, I'll bite it. I'll deal with the pain and the hell and everything else, um, and find a solution. So that's what I do. I resign myself to stay in at the crib, and like study, and find a way to make it to walk this path of life. So, I knew, and the other thing also about getting an option outside of the U.S. is that I knew also, in knowing so much in studying international law, how powerful the United States is, and how powerful the U.S. Constitution is, how influential the U.S. Constitution is, and how the many other constitutions around the earth are predicated exactly off the U.S. Constitution. So, do I think I'm actually going to find refuge, categorically, from the bounty hunters of the U.S. in another country, particularly one where I can function and speak English? Ha ha! Come on, again, being actualistic. So, there it might have been enough of a distance, and people might say, oh yeah, he's run away, he's a coward, and he's abandoned his family, so I'll leave him be. Uh, the law people, I mean, the lone people might not have been that much or whatever, but again, I'm aware of the conditions, and so I knew that even there is no refuge in one place. At that point, politically, from the U.S. government, particularly in that stage of hysteria and paranoia and revenge and retribution. Um, but even further, there ain't no hiding from God. And so, one thing my daddy always told me growing up is like, face the monster head on. Uh, Stand up, be a man, challenge it, face it, confront it, stand up straight. So, I hid in my family home and studied and tried and did my best to like deal with the situation head on. So that's what precipitates my spiritual studies. I'm getting to the door. The door is still here. I'm getting to the door. That's what precipitates my spiritual studies. And I study. I'm like, if I don't agree with American law and man's law, and I know enough about all the other laws around the earth, all the different national laws, I need to find something higher and further authoritative. So I didn't study religion all my life. I believe in God. I believe in the golden rule throughout my life, but I didn't have too much trust in religious leaders. But I figured, you know what? Let me give religion a try, and rather than going to religious leaders, I'm going to study the text. I'm going to go to the source as much as I can directly myself. So that's what I do, and that takes years and years and years. But basically, I live at home. Um, my more is the proprietor of our family home during the. I'm the man of the house, but she's the elder. She's my parent of the house. So she and I have difficulties, and she gets involved in the dispute she becomes basically actually an agent, an intermediary agent between myself and the government. Um, but anyways, I camp out. I entrench myself within the house, within the family home, and I on a day-to-day basis I would go home and study. Otherwise, I would go to the library and study at the library, get online at the library, and that was my life for a number of years. And eventually, my father passes away, and after that happens, very soon after that happens, uh, my mom was like, "Yeah, can't take it anymore." And I always said to my boy, "Yo, if whenever you want me out, let me know. Just tell me, I'll be out. I'll walk the streets. I'll do whatever. If you don't want me here, I'll be out." She said, "You're always welcome here." So I'm like, "Fine." Now we would have disagreements and arguments and serious arguments, but there was always that recognition. However, eventually at one point she said, "Nah." She didn't tell me that I wasn't welcome, but I got she had me locked up and then said you can't come back. So then I was like, okay. At that point, I was midway through a number of projects, including completion of Tobati Gokudao and additionally. And so I had a sense of purpose. I had become a spiritual diplomat. I had found my calling. I had yet to be kind of uh, find an institution to support that work. But I was able to do things that were valuable, and I know a lot of the things, particularly at that stage. This was over 10 years ago, over a decade ago. At that stage, the world, much of the world wasn't ready for it. Actually, some of the world was ready for it, and actually, some of the world was very supportive of it, and let me know about that, and that means so very much to me. Still does. Still, people, it's the world still does do that, and it means to me much. But particularly back then, when wasn't too much people hollering at me. Some people do, and I appreciate that. And that further affirms and substantiates the work that I do, but also recognizing that the masses, masses of people don't recognize and adhere to. Chipmunk is back again. Yeah, hi. No, it's still there. There it is. Can you see it? So much of the world isn't ready for what was shared thousands of years ago, much less what the righteous and transcendent are sharing today. Um, so yeah, Chipmunk's cool with me these days. So we're cool. We're cool. Um, so, anyways, I knew that, and so a lot of what I was sharing, you're getting kind of close, Chippy. So much of what I share is with the knowledge that it's going to go towards another other latter generations. And be received by students of another era, and like studied and practiced and adhered to and appreciated by people of another era, predominantly. It's increasingly along those lines. And who am I? Whatever. I'm just a conduit. I'm a facilitator. I ain't shit. But I just know that what I do provide is along those lines. And so I knew that then, and I knew I had purposefulness. And so rather than the option of walking the streets, and additionally, if I had the opportunity to have a place to go to, have a roof over my head, and to shelter me whilst I do this scribe work, then I need to adhere to that. That's my purpose. That's my responsibility. That's my duty. That's the mitzvah that I am fulfilling. And I think I'm actually in Chippy's house because Chippy did this yesterday. Was like looking at me like, "Yo, you're in my doorway." I'm like, "Yo, I'm here." So, anyways, that's my responsibility to do that. And so, does that mean like swallowing my pride and ego and dealing with people who call me basically subhuman? Not the three fifths compromise type of subhuman, but crazy subhuman. Of like, oh, he's such a high functioning crazy person. He's such a basically people call me a retard. Is basically what people call me. If they say mental illness, they say it's like schizophrenic, psychotic. I can almost talk. Um, Psychotic, and additionally, but basically the way people approach me is like one would a retard, um, and you can call that PC, un-PC, or whatever else, but check yourself. Um, but that's how people come at me. That's how a lot of people come at me with that psychotic, um, psychiatric diagnosis. So I could say bollocks to all of you, and just live on the street and not care about what people think or whatever else, and be increasingly have increasing integrity about how I support myself. Panhandling, or what's that word called when people do music? There's that word. Busking. Haha, got it today. I can busk or whatever else, and not rely upon things that are provided to me on the premise of being a retard. However, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing at this moment. I wouldn't have this computer. I wouldn't have clothing that gets me into doors. And you say these are rags that are over, for the most part, a decade old. This jacket actually is rather expensive. It's fair trade. That's why I have it. and it's also vegan. Um, but I wouldn't have a lot of things that allow me to do what I've done for the past decade. I'll write all the things that I've written over the past decade, to do the studies and to share the teachings that I've shared through the past decade. And so that's why I've done it. Now, still getting to the door. Getting to the door. Now, like I said, my more kicks me out, and the conditions that was happening with that was some cold-blooded, messed up stuff, which was even further furious. It's a little bit of a detail, but I'll share this. I've been raped, molested, tortured, abducted, and so things that happen. Now I say those words, and people are like, yeah, whatever. He's being hyperbolic. He's being exaggerating. This and that. No, I'm not. Those things have actually happened. But I'll give you an idea of like the thing that wasn't physical, that just gives the mindset. I said my father passes away, and a few months after that, that's when I got locked up. My mom says can't come back. It's like fine, if that's the case, fine. But I was sent to a halfway house, um, and there was the propensity of having the things I had, like again the scriptures, the writings, my files, and everything else with me in the halfway house. But the thing about it is that the halfway house was very expensive. Like it's not public subsidized. It has to be privately paid for, and there's uh, health insurance or public was it social security, whatever is involved and stuff like that, because the premise of psychotic, schizophrenic, psychiatric disorder. But the thing about it, like at a halfway house, this particularly the one I was at, it's expensive, like crazy expensive, like $1,800 a month or something like that, and the social security and everything didn't cover it. So how was it be covered? Now my father, in his passing, provides me with a modest inheritance, modest, and I refused it because I wasn't even using money at that point. For a couple of years, I didn't touch money, um, and even when getting like a social security payment or check or whatever, it wasn't touching that either. Again, on the premise of having the psychiatric disorder, wasn't touching that. Just living in a house, food was provided, utilities were provided, so I didn't need all those things, and I was just doing my studies. Um, then when I got kicked out, oh, now you got to live life, this and the other. Okay, fine. Um, Again, it was like either walk the street or continue with these studies and the work that I'm doing. So because that option was still there, I select that. And so that's my ownness, and I have to learn. But here's part of the frustration. I wasn't touching my father's inheritance. I had to like sign a paper to receive this and the other. I refused to do that. So instead of doing that, as my more as the agent, she received the thing, and the guidance that she got was to utilize that to pay for the halfway house, which is frustrating. Again, because it was ridiculously expensive, and that the amount of the inheritance wouldn't pay could only pay that for a short period of maybe a year or two. So it was like, you mean the money that my dad intended for me to like build something from, you're just paying it for rent for me to stay in a halfway house predicated upon me having a psychiatric disorder? It's insult to injury. So, anyways, I stayed in the halfway house for a few months, and then I was able to move into another place, and then, but again, the inheritance is only lasting so long. What are you going to do after that? What am I going to do after that? So, wow, I'm getting deep into this. Let's see how much I can wrap this up. I'm getting to the door. I am actually. So here's what it. Now, in my spiritual path, it is appropriate for me to um, be part of the community of Israel, and join a synagogue and be a member of a synagogue, and go through that process of being recognized as a son of Israel. And so that is what I do. And as I'm in that process, lo and behold, I am informed of an opportunity to move as the funds that were paying the apartment where I was living were coming to a close. I was communicated, or I was informed that um, there is an availability of living in a HUD public housing facility on the same block that I was already living in, exactly where I'm at this moment, um, at a subsidized rate that would be covered by the Social Security, the amount that the government provides. Basically, it's commissary or a stipend or whatever. But basically, I wouldn't have to worry about the the um, the inheritance money running out because would need it, and I don't think there's any inheritance at this point. Um, but anyways, the government would basically cover what I cover the cost of the housing. Um, the the housing facility though is managed by the Jewish Family Services. Oh, wait a minute! Being part of the Jewish community, and now I'm being provided this. Oh, but you don't have to be Jewish to live here. Anybody can do it. It's just managed by GFSA. So again, I'm looking at my purpose. I'm looking at what I can do with the arrangements, and so that's what I do. Still has some things that are unfinished. Um, then so that's what I do, and I move into these facilities where I'm at this moment. Um, so, like I say, the premise, the pretense for all these is very contentious, uh, unagreed upon, and additionally, however, again, I quell my pride and ego and focus on the purpose. And so when I lived here for over a decade. Actually, it's about going on a decade in the next month or two. So I've been here for a decade, um, and I've been able to do a fair amount of things. Um, Always categorically denouncing the psychiatric diagnosis, the accusation of schizophrenia and schizophreniform and psychosis and all this other stuff. But recognizing the might standing in front of me and pitted against me, and the challenge accordingly. So I deal with that. Now, those are the conditions 10 years ago when I first moved here. And as I become established here, as I become established in my spiritual path, in my spiritual walk, and my spiritual discipline, I become increasingly strengthened um, because I become increasingly strengthened. And I wish what I experience in life on no one. Um, it's 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 soul wrenching because there's nobody to trust, and there's a certain experience of futility in trying to connect and trust with anyone, and particularly when people are coming at one with uh, condescension and disrespect, um, in a polite way, but also in an impolite way. It's difficult to combat it day in and day out. Um, so anyway, all right. Let me progress this story. all that being said, all the challenges that I experienced in life, all the woe is me and what everybody's done to me and everything else like that, one of the things that I've learned in my spiritual path, particularly from the Buddha, but from many different teachers, is to accept responsibility for the conditions that we experience in life. And rather than blaming anybody else, looking at what we are doing ourselves to contribute to those conditions and what we can do to change those conditions. Because when we take ownership of our suffering, that's empowering, and we can do something about it. So, um, in my spiritual path, I become increasingly disciplined. I become increasingly knowledgeable about God, about relationship with God, but also about life on earth and discipline in earth and harmony and being attuned with the cycles of earth, the human cycles, the animalistic cycles, the seasonal cycles, and the esoteric cycles of earth and of life in the universe. And in doing that, I become increasingly fortified and formidable and resisting and standing up to the accusations, the condescension, the disrespect, and additionally. And when I do that, oh, guess what? Oh, Peter, you were such a nice guy before. You would just take it, and now you don't. Oh, what are we going to do about that? Now, obviously, people don't talk like that, aren't that honest and direct, but that's basically what's said. That's what's communicated. So, um, in the past decade, I've been involved with a number of groups. One of these groups is the American Indian Movement. And one of the issues of the American Indian Movement, and also in other Native groups and organizations and initiatives here in the Cuyahoga area, I am part of my ancestry is Seminole, from further south of this continent. So I'm honoring my ancestors. I'm fulfilling my responsibility as a Native brother, and doing what's right, being on this land, because this is other than my ancestral land. So it's a matter of supporting Native brethren, the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, Miami, and additional brethren who are native of this land. So that's part of what I do and my purpose for being involved with AIM and the Native brethren of the Cuyahoga area. So one of the issues that's taken up by the Native community here is changing the name of the baseball team here, and changing the mascot of Cleveland baseball, because this is racist, and it's genocidal. It's also classist, but that class is less of a concern. Um, Plain and simple. No, not plain and simple. So I'm involved in the protests and the campaigns within recent years. And so a couple years ago, one of the residents here, and I'm not saying any names. This is love and peace to everybody, including all the residents here. So this is not any implicit, explicit, subtle, subliminal kind of message of retribution or anything else. I'm just stating what the facts are, what the conditions are, to explain what's happening at the door. So one of the residents here wears, actually a number of the residents here wears a wahoo, the racist mascot. And at some point, I just say, that's racist, right? And in the exact kind of tone I did just there. Not coming up to him with this thing, they're just non-confrontational, but just addressing it like, that's racist. The person doesn't talk to me. Pauses for a while, kind of gets a dumb, kind of doe-eyed look, and then walks on. And hasn't talked to me since, in the past 3-4 years since that happens. But even though not talking, does do things that are increasingly provocative, waving huge racist flag in front of my window, walking by, and additionally, that becomes increasingly agitating and provocative and hateful. And even when that's not necessarily the intention, it's still the effect. So recognizing that, rather than stepping up my direct game or my direct action to like counter that, I go to the management of the building and I solicit the management of the building to intercede. And first, the management of the building doesn't, I think, the management of the building ignores the solicitation, and it was repeated. Like maybe after a few weeks, I'd send another, but then after repeated avoidance and non-responsiveness, I on a regular basis, I send things probably on a weekly basis, and things go on for about a year. And there were other solicitations that I make of the management. as well in terms of like being able to have a wife here, because that's one of the rules is not having a wife, no other occupants. So the management category did not say anything back. And I would give written things, send emails. I was rather judicious in how much I called, but on all these fronts, no response, no reply, no direct contact. And so after over a year thereabouts, um, and particularly in recent years, the baseball team is increasingly successful. So now the rah factor increases, and so amidst that environment, and as the Native community steps up the campaign accordingly, there's an increased amount of hostility and tensions. And so actually there was a meeting. We had a meeting at here at Asona Ashram, and the some of the members of the community who come to attend the meeting couldn't find a place, and made the suggestion of having a sign or something that could be visible from the outside that people can see, because the doorbell doesn't, the door buzzer doesn't work, and additionally, so because of that, we put a sign up in front of on the outside of the window, so that people can see. Building management did not like that, and basically all the sign said was Asona Ashram. This. Basically, not all the symbols at first, just the letters, and particularly the letters from and the characters from other languages. So the management didn't know what it said, and just didn't like it at all, and it felt it was something like we were making some land claim or something like that. And so basically, like soon after putting that sign up, oh, now that we got some attention, oh, now we got some responsiveness, and basically it was a threat of eviction, of like, oh, if you don't move that sign, that's it, you're out. And so now at that point, I was rather indignant, because like, wait, hold up, I've been coming to you, and you did you and so and I brought that up, and so basically the response of the manager was, oh, what can you do? It's their prerogative what they want to wear, what they flag this, and like, we can't do anything about that. Oh, but we can do something about that sign. And so again, obviously the duplicity and the double standards and the bullshit was evident. But again, it's a high-handedness. So what I do with the Sona Ashram, what we do with the Sona Ashram is, instead of having the sign out there 24/7, we have it out there for selective purposes, or for select reasons, like when we have an event, in addition, so that people can see where we are. And the management seemed to be like kind of not push the issue, so because the eviction threats didn't continue after that. Sometimes the computer races, so I'd check on that. So that's what happens for a number of months, and then that's what happens for actually maybe a number of months, maybe less than a year, but thereabouts. But I guess after a while, it becomes too much. All right, again, progress the story a little bit. So tension becomes increased, and it becomes too much. The management still didn't respond to the conditions here of hostility and racism amongst the tenants in the living environment here, and was dismissive about the solicitation of terms concerning having a spouse in the facility. They said, "Oh, get married and then we'll talk about it." That's almost exactly quoting. And then for a Jewish family service, that's again, it calls into question those terms, and actually calls into question whether this is actually JFSA doing it, because it may be agents that are communicating. JFSA works in partnership with other agencies, and so and the actual staff members who are specifically articulate these policies of eviction and get married and we'll talk about it, or are actually members of a staff of another agency. So it's difficult to say. being communicated specifically by JFSA because, again, a Jewish family service agency saying that about family and according to Jewish principles is exactly not halakhic. So that's not even seriously calling the question. It's like you can't call yourself a Jewish family organization and say that. So it's this intermediary agency that's saying it, and so then it's a matter of saying, well, is this intermediary agency actually genuinely representing JFSA? And additionally, so that's part of the whole kind of smoke and mirrors and everything else like that. But those are the conditions. So, anyways, within these conditions, after continual refusal of addressing the concerns that are communicated from myself and on the part of Asan Ashram, then and with the threat of eviction for not complying with the solicitation of removing the sign, then there were some inspections and solicitations of entering the premises. So there are certain routine inspections like every year thereabouts, but at this point there were like additional inspections. And when providing notice, the notice says you don't have to be there, you don't have to do this and the other. We're just giving you notice of what we're doing. So I'm fine. Getting way too detailed. I have to work on wrapping this up. I knew it was going to be long, but I didn't know it was going to be this long. Now I got to worry about battery and storage and everything else. So, point being on that, when the inspectors come, I confront the agency at that point, and the agency didn't want to talk about that, just wanted to go inside the unit. And I said, "Yo, I can't welcome you into this. This is a sanctuary. There are protocols for being here, like taking your shoes off, taking your footwear off, wearing something above your head, as you would in a synagogue, or a gurdwara, or at a masjid, taking off the footwear. And additionally, so like there are protocols for being here, and so you're soliciting me to welcome you in. I'm not welcoming you in. I'm not preventing you from coming in. I'm not obstructing you. I'm not threatening you." But I'm not welcoming you in. So, and I don't have to because that's what the notice said. But because of that, now, one, at another point when I was absent from the domicile, from the premises, they came in anyways, and let it be known in a number of different ways, and one of the concerns that was mentioned to the management, the building management, was a fire alarm that would continually go off to the point where I disabled it, and so now those two things, because I didn't welcome the people in, and because I disabled the fire detector, it wasn't even a threat of eviction; it was an action of eviction. So that was this past year, and it was like an imminent. It's not even a threat. It's an action. It's just a matter of either you're out before it happens or otherwise. So, however, but that's not the thing about it. Before that's done, there's a knock on the door, and it's the popo, and it wasn't an action of eviction. It wasn't a court order to carry out an eviction notice. No, it's lockup and transporting me to a psych ward for not welcoming in the inspector. So that's rather unusual. Yeah. So then I got locked up. This was about 6 months ago, and was there for a few weeks, and then released. Came back here, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, the threat of eviction is gone. The action of eviction, oh, you can stay. Things are getting wishy-washy now at this point. So anyways, those are the conditions. Now, what's this all got to do with the door? An hour later. There's that meme or whatever. An hour later. Seriously, an hour later. What this got to do with the door? So, now we have the backdrop to explain what the door is. During the course of the years, I put up signs on the door, particularly on the back door. It's on the front door too, but the front door is interior. It goes into the inside, so only people who live in the building see that, or people who have access to the building can see the indoor. This is directly to the outdoor, so anybody who comes off the street can go to the back door and see what's on the back door. And so what the paper is are just signs about what the Sona Ashram is. They're prayers of peace and love. There are blessings from different traditions. Um, there is the photographs are photographs from the brochure, and do I have it? Don't have it now. Um, but photographs from the brochure of Asana Ashram that just show pictures of people who are exemplifying the principles that Asana Ashram is. So it's just like there's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There's an organizational chart of the United Nations system on the door. So all those things are there. That's what that is. So that's peace and love. That's what it is, literally. Um, so the management hasn't said anything too much directly about that, but um, that's what we put on the door. That's what Asana Ashram puts on the door. And as I said before, when we talk about the experience of mélanger and loving everybody and claiming the earth and loving everybody and not picking sides, even like my Eurocentric, Afrocentric sides that are against other people, not even picking those sides. I'm the earth. I love everybody. I'm claiming everybody. So we're not worried about different ethnicities or religions. We're worried about right and wrong, regardless of who's doing it. And that's how we are aligned. So when I talk about everybody goes to heaven, and when I talk about loving everybody, and I mentioned um, that not everybody likes that, and people want to find those who are aligned with them and who have the same vendettas that they have, and anybody who doesn't share that, they get on another list. So we got put on another list, and we experience the hostilities accordingly. Now, the thing about it is that we are significantly aligned with all peoples, and we are kind of aligned tough, which means that even for each community, whether it's white nationalists, whether it's black nationalists, whether it's Zionists, whether it's anti-Zionists or other, we're lined up with all them, jihadi and all them. We lined up with all them. And it's not just a matter of like politics, and it's not just a matter of ideology. We practice that. We do salat, we do davening, we do yoga, we do puja, we do samadhi. So we are entrenched. We are significantly involved, committed, and in solidarity with the many different factions that even are against each other, which makes it difficult for people to do things against Asana Ashram directly, regardless of what the pretense is. And it's not a matter of being infallible or invincible. It's just a matter of communicating what the nature of things is. So, and people don't like that. So people try to find ways of doing hostilities. And again, I'm not impervious. I got locked up 6 months ago. And I will say this, on that particular lockup, it was one of the most congenial lockups that I experienced, because in previous experiences, like I said, I've been raped, tortured, and molested. Had my clothes cut off, been butt naked with medical practitioners dancing and singing songs about "It's getting hot in here." Da, da, da. So whilst I'm being injected with a tranquilizer that renders me unconscious, and then subsequently drugged with other psychotropic drugs to the point of feeling intoxicated and drowsy and disoriented, and additionally with having a catheter forcefully injected inside the opening of my penis, so that the urine can be extracted. Oh, but it's a medical procedure. Oh, it's by the book. Right, that's rape. And that's not the only way I've been raped, but that's what I'll talk about at this moment. So those have been previous experiences. Now, in this most recent lockup, it wasn't done. Again, I'm stronger at this point, and I'm increasingly disciplined. And what I've learned is that how our own hatred and our own anger, even not even being hateful, but just being angry at things being done to us, even that anger being used against us, even just our thoughts and what we're thinking being used against us. So I'm increasingly disciplined, and people are aware of that now. So on this most recent lockup, and this ain't bait for like, see what you can't do it to me. No. I'm just saying what the nature of it is. On this most recent lockup, they didn't cut off my pants. Now, they did strap me down and hold me down there to the point where I urinated in my own pants, but they at least didn't stick a tube up my penis on this particular occasion. 6 months ago. And if that's too graphic for cats, yo, this is life, and I'm communicating what's going on. So that was 6 months ago. They didn't cut off my pants. They didn't stick the tube hose up my penis. Um, they did forcefully inject me with psychotic medicine to the point of rendering me drowsy and intoxicated additionally. And that continued on for a while until I said that I wouldn't fight it. I wasn't combative anyways, but that was enough for me to be released. So, hey, chilling. How you doing? So, my point is that there's a certain amount of efficacy now in our discipline, and uh, there's an increasing sense of peace, security, and we're building comfort along on this foundation. But again, it involves discipline. It involves daily practice and weekly practice, upasada practice, monthly practice, yearly practice of things. Yo, I'm in the sukkah. So, and I'm not in the sukkah to say I'm in the sukkah. I'm just letting you know that's what it is. Anyways, this is the anyway. All right. So that's what the signs are. Now, there's one other thing that we put there that I personally put on the door that contributes to what you see in that scene. Um, that is the yellow bag. So I have to explain what that yellow bag is, and a lot of what I've said already is also communicating what that yellow bag means. I mentioned this building being managed by JFSA in part. It's also managed by HUD and other agencies as well that are collectively involved and that make collective decisions. But because JFSA is one of the managements of the building historically, there's a certain sense of ownness or proprietorship where Jewish agencies, particularly synagogues or temples, visit and provide like a bag of groceries for people, because there are people here who experience challenges and need certain facilities. And I'm not saying this is not greater than less than. I'm just saying there is certain legitimacy of the services that are being provided here. So I'm mindful of that. And along those lines, there are temples and synagogues that come here and leave bags of groceries on, particularly during Hanukkah, and probably actually only around Hanukkah. And then also, so that's one thing, and that's in front of all the residents. But there's something also that the Jewish agencies do, which is the Israeli agencies do, which is during a certain portion of the year, which is earlier this past year, this past few seasons ago, spring, thereabouts. There's a day on the calendar called Yom HaShoah, and basically it's a day that commemorates the Holocaust. Very legit cause and a legit memorial. It's a very serious day within the tradition of Israel. However, it's not halakhic. It's not prescribed by the Torah because it happens in the past century. So it happens after the Torah is around. So in terms of its like authoritarianness or authoritativeness, it's less authoritative. It's not one of the official mitzvah of observing throughout the year. Now, again, it's very serious, and within the whole of the Reform, Progressive, Conservative, Orthodox Judaism, it's observed without question. However, I abstain from observing it tough. Like I don't disrespect it. I honor it, but in terms of observing it, I abstain from doing the what is traditionally done, because again, it's not prescribed by the Torah. And also, Holocaust is going on exactly at this moment on this land when you look at the indigenous people and additionally. So how are you going to commemorate the Holocaust, genocide to a people, which is legit, meaning commemorating and stopping it and abhorring it is legit. But how can you genuinely commemorate that experience when you're committing it exactly at this moment to Native people and additionally on this land? We can talk about black folk too on this land. It's not even just duplicitous and hypocrisy. it's nearly almost blasphemous when you look at the holiness that's attached to Yom HaShoah. So again, I'm not against Yom HaShoah, but I'm against the duplicity. So again, on this land, anyways, I say all that because on the holiday, the Jewish agencies, it's a temple or synagogue that actually does it for the most part, from what my awareness that's communicated to me directly from the people who do it. Leave a candle, a yahrzeit candle, which is supposed to be lit during that day to commemorate those who died in the Holocaust. So this is a very now the yahrzeit candle is a very sacred practice within Judaism, within the tradition of Israel, that people are supposed to light when every on commemorating the death and birth of ancestors, particularly parents and additionally. So it is a sacred practice. So to apply that to Yom HaShoah, there's legitimacy within that, but again, it's not halakhic. It's not Torah prescribed. Um, but to put it on somebody's doorstep, and again, I think they only put it on people who are identified as Jewish. Um, so it's not on everybody's doorstep in the building. Um, that's a certain amount of imposition now, because it's kind of like saying, hey, have you lit your yahrzeit candle? And so that's imposing a certain religiosity. And again, it's very quiet. It's just a candle in front of the doorstep. But it's a very, again, it's a heavy handedness, a heavy high handedness. So that's what that bag is. I abstain from lighting the candle for a number of years. Those candles have been left at my doorstep, and I've just held on to it because I respect it. I don't dishonor that, but I don't observe it, and I do recognize the imposition. And so I've held on to it, and so I've held on it for a number of years, and in the past year, this past year, when I experienced the threats of eviction, the refusal of recognition and communication, particularly on the part or in consideration of Native people. I'm like, yo, yeah, okay, here's the yahrzeit candle, and I put it on the door handle, and that's what that bag is. It's the bag that was left on the door handle for Yom HaShoah, but I'm leaving it there as a sign of like, oh, you want to commemorate the Holocaust? Well, what about what you're doing exactly at this moment? Here's the Holocaust. Um, so that's what that, and that's been there for months. So that's what that is. So those are the things that have been left here by myself and on the part of Sona Ashram, the signs and the uh, the bag that has the yahrzeit candle in it for Yom HaShoah. That's been there for the signs have been there for years. That bag has been there for probably actually about a year at this point, and it's been like that. Has been comparatively untouched. Um, the residents don't mess. I'm on the third floor, so not too many people walk by, and otherwise it hasn't been touched. Even amongst other residents who may dislike me or have hostilities towards me or don't talk to me or whatever else, it has been respected. Now that being said, a couple months ago, uh, as I return to the domicile and I go to the back door, I see that somebody basically threw a milkshake or something looks like a chocolate something or other. That's what that debris is on the windshield on the storm window. So it's not just a matter of the door being unclean. Somebody actually threw something on the back door. So it was a hostile thing. Now you're like, Peter, are you doing that ticky-tack little symbolic thing? That's not what I'm doing. It's what's being done amidst the other things that are going on, all the other hostilities. And this is something that's directly done towards Asona Ashram, towards the signs, towards the love and peace, and additionally the kumbaya and everything else. That's what's being done, and that was done a couple months ago, and that was actually maybe a month or two after I got locked up, and amidst other hostilities that were communicated. So this is the first direct hostility against Asona Ashram per se that's evidenceable. Um, there have been thefts and stuff like that, but this is the first like overt kind of aggression, and so I leave it there to let people see what's happening and to show all parties involved what the conditions are and let it speak for itself. So that's been there for a couple months, and I've yet to wash it off or anything else like that because let it speak for itself. So that's what I do. Now, all this being said, why am I sharing this now? Because as I come back to the domicile yesterday, I see those flyers, and the flyers are just two like postcard type joints um, that are left in the bag that holds the yahrzeit candle. So for some like myself who knows what the yahrzeit candle means, you're literally talking about Holocaust, and you're conjuring the experience of Holocaust. That's why me hanging it up there is very provocative for those who know what it is. It's extremely provocative. Some could say that itself is blasphemous because of what it means. But I do that intentionally to show what's going on, and that's how serious it is. And that's why people who go by it leave it alone, because for the most part, those who walk by it most regularly know what it is, and what's involved in even just touching it or doing anything to it, whether it's removing it, say, hey, you're disrespecting, not even doing that, not even touching it at all. Um, if anything, the protocol would be to go to me and address me directly about it, say, oh, Peter, why are you doing that? You should remove that yourself. That's the protocol in amongst the righteous, and additionally, but haven't even come to me like that. So it's been there for a couple months. So yesterday is the first day I saw those flyers. Anybody have showing evidence of touching it, and they left the flyers there. Um, so again, extremely provocative. To do anything to the bag is extremely provocative. So I make note of that. So then it's a matter of, okay, so what are people communicating? What are these flyers? It happens to be flyers to go to uh, a spiritual cafe, a Christian cafe that's in the nearby vicinity, apparently. And so it's two flyers that are communicating the spiritual community, the congregation, and to visit the cafe. And so, haha, now that's serious offensive, and that's not even just offensive, but that's like threatening. If you look at all the different ways that can be interpreted in the sim, symbologic, symbolically can be what can be symbolically communicated through that. Um, it can be considered as exactly a threat of Holocaust, of genocide. I'm saying, oh, here's your option: either Holocaust or convert to Christianity. You say, well, that's a stretch of interpretation. That's probably the most foremost interpretation that could be made from that maneuver. Um, because that's how serious, that's how solemn and sacred that is. The yahrzeit candle is, and the Yom HaShoah bag. That's how serious that is. So to put a Christian, come to the Christian cafe, come to the Christian congregation in that bag, that's how serious that communication is, whether it's intended that way or not. That's the foremost interpretation. If you ask anybody who knows what those candles are, that's what like basically one would interpret it. Ask you can I invite you to ask them. They tell me differently. Um, but that's the foremost message that's communicated in leaving those flyers there. Now, I looked around and see if that again. Nobody, and I've lived here for a decade. Nobody's left anything on the back door like that. Sometimes deliveries will be made, but there hasn't been anybody like solicitors coming in saying, "Hey, would you like to do this and the other?" No flyers left on the thing at all. That's the first time in 10 years that somebody's left flyers on that back door. So is it just by accident? Is it just by happenstance? Don't see the evidence that would suggest that. Now, to be honest, when I went out today, I did see flyers on the other door that's nearby to another unit. So then it's increasingly the the explanation lends itself increasingly towards that. Of, oh, we were just making our rounds and we just left it on all the doors, so we just saw the bag there, so we just took the opportunity to leave it there. Okay, I can see that further, but still not. Because now you just cleaned it up a little bit further, and I know too much about life to know about circumstance. Now, either you knew or somebody who you know knows, who told you to do it knows. And if they don't know, they should know, and they better know. And that's why my plan is to go and share that accordingly to communicate the message of like, yo, you left this and you did wrong, and you got to do better. Um, so now, and that's not even. I'm still working on how to phrase that approach and that address, but there is the intention of letting the congregation know about what is done. Um, and again, I don't plan to tell them like where I live or what else, because you should know where you've been and where you visited. And I plan not to touch the. I think that's also appropriate for me not to touch the things and let that stay there and speak for itself, and invite the congregation to remove it itself, but not to tell where it is, because again, you should know where you left it. So, anyways, those are the conditions. And again, this is all part of what does it have to do with melange? This is all part of the experience of not picking an exclusionary side, of loving everybody. This is part of the pragmatism and the consequences that come. Now, what I abstain from articulating explicitly in this 2 hours of verbosity is that the beauty. Whoa, I got peace, yo. Oh, it's awesome. I feel light. I sleep well. I laugh. I sing. I whistle. I clean. I live. I pray. I meditate. Life is beautiful. Can you check out these colors, yo? I watched a tree that looked like a botanical snow cone yesterday. Chippy done visited me at the sukkah today. Oh, I got the ushpazine going on. So, yo, life is miraculous and beautiful and awesome. And I got no regrets. I've done so many bad things in my life, and I make the best of efforts of making amends. But I've done my best, and when I haven't done right, I do my best to make it right. And there's light with that. And I'm at peace. I walk with God, and I say hallelujah, namaste. That's the beauty, the miracle, the well-being, the healing, the wellness, the healthiness that comes with finding that singularity, finding that uniformity, finding that oneness that I am and that I belong with. Without the hyphen, without the exceptions, without the, oh, that's interesting, that's so unique, oh, that's so tragic. Nah, this is not the tragic mulatto story. This is the transcendent mélanger story. And you can choose to listen to what story you want to listen to, but the consequences come with that as well. It ain't easy. It ain't easy. I think you just done seen it ain't easy. Oh, but it's so beautiful. So anyways, that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. What's that from? That's a reference, but I have to think about what that is. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyways, so that's dos cosas I got to share. Now, tres cosa is updates. So I mentioned before, I think I'm going to revert to my notes now. And I was scheduled to bring down the sukkah today because Sukkot is completed this year. But I don't know if I'm going to get to it today, or maybe tonight. It takes less to take it down than it does to put it up, in my experience. So, updates. So one of the main things to share is that I am near completion of an initial draft, a manuscript of an anthology. And this anthology includes works I write within the past 20 years, since graduating from law school. It includes things that I write when I'm in law school 20 years ago, all the way up through today. The work that I've done as a spiritual diplomat, and additionally, this includes poetry, that includes prose and essays. It includes letters to organizations and open letters to communities. It includes documents that are hundreds of pages long, that includes scriptural reasoning and citations of holy scriptures, of rationales and explanations of the politics and the policies of Asana Ashram and what I do. So it's an anthology. It's 5 volumes of hundreds, actually, yeah, thousands, over 1,000 pages actually of writings. Now you say, well, wait a minute, what's up with the concentration? Like, what's the level of dilution? It's up to you to decide. Each volume obviously is a distinct. The first volume, my point was not to get into too much in this, but I'll just share this as the irony of like explaining something that, and in doing so precluding the actual doing of it. So I'm supposed to be working on this today. Anyways, I'll say I've said this before in other sessions. Nah, this is too much for Cafe Melange. I've already gone enough. Might as well just finish it. Fine. Look at that the thinking process in action. So transparent. Volume 1 is a collection of poetry and short prose. And it includes an anthology, a previous anthology that or a compilation that I completed when I was in law school of writings. All of it is officially or formally unpublished, but I've shared it in a number of different forums. And in the work, the intention with this is to have it published by one agency or another. And the purpose of it is to share it, to get it out there, so that people know about what I do, the work I've done, and the work I do, and to be able to better support and get involved and participate with this work, and learn from it and apply the benefits and accordingly. So the first volume is anthology of poetry prose. I think that and also illustrations and photographs as well. Second volume involves open letters, increasingly and basically work-related type of communications and proclamations. Comparatively shorter writings, like I said, open letters, communiques, some uh, discourses on topics and issues and principles and teachings, but comparatively modest in terms of size. Maybe a few pages for the most part, or maybe a few pages of an excerpt of a longer document. But that's where the second thing is. So it's like an introduction to kind of the work of my work as a spiritual diplomat. Some scriptural reasoning involved in it, some passages, Holy Scripture passages included. But the third volume, volume number 3, includes longer documents, discourses on specific topics like wealth ethos, like melange and spirituality, about the guidance of Asona Ashram, the teachings that guide us, and additionally, and some of those documents are, like I said, over 100 pages or thereabouts. So that compilation is the volume number 3. Volume number 4 is a collection of things that are increasingly out there. You think what I've said already is out there? I've written a lot of stuff that's like, yo, Peter, what was going on? But the thing is, it's necessary, it's helpful, it's beneficial to have to see these writings, to get to be familiar with these writings, to see what it's like to be outside the box in an uncomfortable, awkward, perceived insane way. To be able to come back into conventionality and articulate the experience and lessons that come from being out there, back to earth. So I share those writings accordingly, and it does provide some explanation, like, oh, okay, I see where this gets. And if someone studies this effectively enough, then like the rationales and like the stream of reasoning and building, and additionally becomes increasingly evident and logical, perceivable. So that's the reason why I share that. So that's volume number 4, and then volume number 5 is uh, a collection of writings that I do for the past decade or thereabouts after graduating from law school. But it's basically things that I found in my notebook. I've got stacks and stacks of notebooks. So these are things I've like written as notes, and not even just notes, but like extended writings, comparatively creative writing in composition that I didn't include within the first volume or the others, because the first volume because it's longer, and the other volumes because it's less business oriented. So that's collection. That's volume number 5. That's the anthology, and it's near completion, or at least the initial draft. There's a part of it that's still has a few months in the works, but this is near to the point of presentable to others in a formal way. That's one thing I'm working on, and that's one of the priorities I have at the moment, is to complete. In terms of the mixed heritage discussion group, we have it yesterday. It's the seventh session that we have a week. So we've been going this for about 2 months. Same duration as with these cafe melange joints. Going doing it for about 2 months. We have an average attendance of about 3 people, two of which tend to be me and my more. Um, and So there's regularity. I've been absent, or I've abstained from being very proactive in like reaching out to people and reaching further, strengthening the reach out to people that I already reach out to because of the holidays, past month actually. So with these holidays completed, with Simchat Torah completed this past 2 days, and amidst completing the anthology, God willing, within the next few days to a week or so, my intention is to, God willing, I will reach out further to brethren here in the Cuyahoga area, and particularly in the University Circle area here in the Heights, the extended area of the Heights, to be involved and participate and attend these mixed heritage discussion group sessions. And to get insight, get feedback on how to progress these and make it increasingly worth people's while. Same thing with Cafe Mélanger. My intention is to reach out to some YouTubers again. I have yet to follow up with brethren that I've reached out to already. My intention is to get some suggestions again, or not even suggestions, yes, but also comments, and share the comments. So there's that. Mélanger Ethos Institute, the Community Dharma Cooperative, again, with increased availability, anticipated within the next couple months. Actually, not without that kind of conditional phrase. We are continuing with the work of Mélanger Ethos Institute. That includes establishment of certain projects and ventures and partnerships with other agencies and organizations and institutions and further. So again, there's the anticipation of increased availability of further and in earnest pursuing that line of work upon the completion of the anthology and an increased amount of availability with work. And then also with YouTube, maybe actually distinct from Cafe Mélanger, but the consideration, I mentioned this in another session, maybe in another forum, but establishing a YouTube channel that has a series that is illustrated. This past week, I see for the first occasion a web channel or a YouTube channel called Tifu or Tifo, which is a football channel. And basically, they put together illustrated shorts. So the illustration is very simple. It's very basic, and then they do a narration, and the topics tend to be obviously football, world football, but there's a whole huge range of a variety of topics, from describing like football tactics and methodologies in competition to like giving stories about players' background, and additionally, and so again, it's illustrated, it's simple, but it's very informative and it's very interesting. It's maybe 3 or 4 minutes each, and the value added is very high, and the mechanics of it, like the infrastructure that seems to be involved, is very modest. It seems to be very doable. So the consideration is doing something along those same lines for Mélanger. I think I mentioned maybe in one of the joints or in another one about Crash Course and how um, uh, one of our collegial brethren, Tyler Sammy, is involved with, and it's not, the group's name is actually called Thought Cafe, and it puts together Crash Course, if I recall correctly. So Thought Cafe already does stuff like this in terms of animation and talking about world history and civilization primarily, but it already does things like this, shorts that are 3-4 minutes long or thereabouts. But The idea with the Mélanger series is, again, doing it from a Mélanger perspective, and with Mélanger voices, Mélanger writing, and did I say perspective and experience? So that's a consideration, and but there's that propensity for partnership. But obviously, we need the backing, the materiality, the sponsorship, the investment. So that's part of the work to be done. But one of the intentionalities is going towards, again, ethics-based organizations. I'll say some companies. I've already said Alafia before. I've said Dr. Bronner's. I've thrown a lot Chaz Organic in there. Um, some are larger than others. Some have additional budgets like that can be drawn from per the interest and receptivity. So, anyways, I'll throw another one in there. Ahimsa, the footwear company out of Brazil. Particularly international companies that might have an increased amount of interest in marketing or sharing a message to an audience here in the U.S. And this is other than the intention is other than like capitalizing off of the American consumer market and just doing it in another way that's just the same as other kind of commercial entities and enterprises wanting to dip into the U.S. market. We're not necessarily adverse towards the benefits that come with that. However, our focus, our concentration, again, as I said before, is focusing on villages and uh, building communities, strengthening our community experience within our different metropolitan areas. And we've selected, we have a select number of cities, 20. I mentioned Accra being one, here in Cuyahoga is one, yeah, just because yours truly. And there are 18 others. We're already over 2 hours. Do I say all 20? Yes. Singapore, Tokyo, Shanghai, Mumbai, Jeddah, Jerusalem, Kubenhauen, Nuremberg, Santa Lorenza in Roma, in the land of the Guarani, Liberdade in Sao Paulo, and in the land of the Mayan, Guadalajara, and specifically Santa Terra. We're talking about in the land of the Oleon, Berkeley, and we're talking about the Potomac area, Washington, D.C., and we're talking about in the land of the Taino, Habana, and I already mentioned here in the land of the Haudenosaunee and Miami, UNI Village, Cuyahoga. Um, Manchester. Uh, and Addis Ababa. And in the land of the Nhosa, we're talking about Cape Town and Cape Town. And I think that covers it. I'm going to leave it at that. I think that was 20. Viente. So those are the cities that we're focusing on. Obviously, again, for different reasons, specific reasons, intentional reasons. But in terms of our cooperation with companies to sponsor even this Mélanger channel, prospective Mélanger channel, whatever, it is with this intentionality of cultivating that community experience and establishing an agreement, an arrangement, rather than just like, oh, this thing is sponsored by such and such. Go check them out. It's a matter of structuring and framing and cultivating our cooperation and investment along those lines of community development, so that the community development helps the companies as well, so that with the strengthened community, there's strengthened economic cooperative that is conducive towards it. So whether that's establishing like co-op things and co-op incentives, or additionally, again, we're open to like sharing a general message to a general audience that supports the companies as well. So it's not a matter of negating that or discouraging that, but we don't want that to be the main thing. We don't want to rely upon that. So again, it's a matter of finding companies that are ethical, fair trade, vegan, primarily or fundamentally, and then also that are open to multiculturalism, that support multiculturalism, and particularly the Mélanger experience. And those I mentioned are specifically because Alafia, it's an inter-ethnic couple that are the founders of Alafia. Dr. Bronner's, is communicates a kumbaya, love the world joint. Charles Organics, their motto is why be monocultural? Monocultural is boring, I think is the actual quote or something like that. And Ahimsa footwear is in Brazil. Brazil has a large population of melange people, and it's part of the culture. A lot of Brazilians say everybody's mixed in Brazil. Um, so, anyways, that's the third the other thing. Um, One thing I'll close with on this joint, uh, and now we're seriously getting into battery issue, and storage is getting pushed to it as well. Um, I'm gonna go back to that observation I make about the video at Penn State in the land of the Haudenosaunee. That idea, that challenge of not choosing either side or choosing both sides, however you want to frame that, and continuing to be aligned and have allegiance with both sides. What I observe is the benefit that comes with finding an identity that is singular, that incorporates all that, where the responsibilities and the rituals of each of those traditions, all the traditions, when one is multi-ethnic and multi-heritage, when all those are appropriately honored and respected and practiced, but there is an identity, a circum or a an overarching identity that that holds all those different branches together, um, or all those different threads or strands or lineages, heritages together as one heritage of, oh, I'm such and such, and this is what I do on this occasion. Um, that can take that can look a number of different ways. It can be like a unique thing. It can be an omni thing, like I described with being an earthling. Um, but I do find benefit that comes with, as much as I can speak to that effect, I do find benefit that comes with um, identifying with a singularity, and as a singularity within a singularity, um, a singular being within a singular way of being, and in doing it and identifying that and articulating that, also identifying how to be that way. What are the rituals? What are the customs? What are the principles? Um, that come with being that singularity, that include all the differences, all the different lineages in together. Um, and then when people ask you what are you, this is what it is. This is the name. This is the path. Um, and then uh, having the conversation from that. Um, when I mentioned it being a circle or an overarching thing, there is an element that there is, at some point, the esoteric has to be addressed. The esoteric has to be answered. Those questions have to be answered. And the identity has to be a provider of that answer. Um, and so you can call it spirituality, you can call it religion, you can call it whatever. There, that component is intrinsically involved within whatever that singularity is, whatever that oneness is. Um, and that also helps to guide the rituals and the the methodology of being that way. It helps to give purpose. It helps to give purpose. It helps to strengthen relationship, and to give guidance in addressing the big picture and the big questions, but also in the little details of day to day of like, oh, how should I do this? How do I do that? Um, so that's what I share at this moment. Um, Ah, haha, I do remember to do this. Thank you. My intention is to conclude each of these joints with a recitation of Dr. Maria P.P. Root's uh, Bill of Rights for people of mixed heritage. Um, so just have as like a sign off. And an affirmation and a connection. So that's what I do here. Before I do that, mañana, then there is intended to be a schedule or a session. God willing, there will be God willing, there will be a session mañana. And Thursday again is the lighthearted day. I have read a story, another story. So this story is another one from the anthology of short stories. It is the author's name, if I recall correctly, is Peter Ho Davies, I think is his name, and the name of the story is called Minotaur. So that's what's on schedule for mañana. And until then, here is the Bill of Rights for people of mixed heritage, provided by Dr. Maria P.P. Root. I have the right not to justify my existence in this world, not to keep the races separate within me, not to justify my ethnic legitimacy, not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my physical or ethnic ambiguity. I have the right to identify myself differently than strangers expect me to identify. To identify myself differently than how my parents identify me. To identify myself differently than my brothers and sisters. To identify myself differently in different situations. I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial or multi-ethnic. To change my identity over my lifetime and further than once. To have loyalties and identification with further than one group of people. To freely choose whom I befriend and love. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Zaijian. Adios. Te Jagaris. Esempe na as samudwo. Kele ofred. One love and peace.